Welcome back to the garage here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today I'm going to go over a list of 10 things I did wrong on my first part wrapping or part skinning with carbon fiber material. Now, if you're like me, you're going to watch a lot of tutorials to start to get an idea of what to do when you want to wrap with carbon fiber. And the great thing about tutorials is they're going to show you the right way to do stuff only. The bad thing about it is, well, typically they won't show you the things that happen when you deviate from the optimum plan. So this list is 10 things that I have, kind of figured out the hard way of the mistakes of this is what happens when you don't do things as exactly shown on the internet. Now this list is going to be in kind of a chronological order of the process because I am right now finishing up the first set I've ever done, and this is a set of Porsche 944 parts, and this is a purple carbon fiber from Venom Carbon that I used. So the first on my list is to use only the proper tools. Now when you first get started, you can watch a lot of videos and they tell you, oh, go ahead and use some scissors, they use this and use that. Well, I thought, okay, so I need some scissors, right? I had a nice set of scissors out, and what I realized is that these are not even very sharp because, well, I kind of abuse them in the shop. So I went out and bought a good set of scissors, something like this, which is a big one, and then I've also got a set of these small little ones. Now both of these items were bought down at Walmart, so they're pretty easy to find. You can get them online through Amazon or anywhere else, but I figured the big ones are going to be great for cutting the large sections off the parts, and these little ones, the way they're set up, they have the little tips that can get in kind of the nooks and crannies. Now, I also found that using a razor blade was not very good at cutting things, but at the end, when I got to the end, we're cutting through pieces on the edge, having a Dremel with a cutoff wheel and also with a kind of a router bit or a grinder is awesome to do a lot of trimming. Once you have resin applied and it's a hard piece, these items here were going to be awesome. Now, item 2 is going to be kind of the technique to apply the carbon fiber material. Now, if you ever watched anything on the channel, you know I've done a lot of vinyl wrapping here in the garage. I've done 4 or 5 different vehicles, and one thing I thought I had down was how to apply carbon fiber. It's got to be the same, right? Well, not really, because vinyl, when you slide across the material, you typically will push with your hand to kind of block out some of the air or push the air out from the material. Well, when you do that carbon fiber, the thing that happens is you start to spread the material out, or you catch the fibers and you basically split it apart. So with this, when you're applying the carbon, what you want to do is pat the material. So if, for instance, if I was patting this one, instead of sliding my hand across, I'm going to pat down with the hand. Now you can do that, kind of do it perpendicularly. Obviously don't slide, don't push it at an angle, but put it like 90 degrees to the surface as best as possible to apply the material. All right, so item 3. One thing I really did wrong was that I misapplied material and had some issues with adhesion. So a couple of these parts I'll show you. The first one is the steering column cover, if you will, on the Porsche 944. If I look down on this one, you can see on the edge, it didn't get applied all the way. And, well, I just kept going because I thought I could fix it later and no big deal. Well, with this carbon fiber, one thing you're going to learn if you don't get it adhered down properly on the first step of trying it, it's not going to get fixed later on. And here's a second place and a third place I also got on this piece around the ignition cylinder. You can see here on the bottom edge and a couple spots here on the other part along the light switch. So again, it's pretty easy to get excited, not get everything laid down and think you're going to come back to it. Don't do it. Never leave the step of doing the initial carbon fiber material adhesion to the plastic piece you're wrapping or whatever you're wrapping. Don't go beyond that step if it is not perfect, because you're not going to get that mistake taken out or you're not going to fix it later on. All right, so item number 4 on my list is not wearing the proper protective gear or the proper PPE, if you will. When I initially did this and started cutting on it, well, once I got everything down, I thought, ooh, I'm just going to go ahead and touch it and sand on it, and it's going to be okay. Now, I have watched other videos, and they tell you in there, wear gloves, wear long sleeves. This stuff is like fiberglass. It's itchy. One thing I didn't realize is that once you put resin on, it becomes like little shards of glass. So I didn't wear gloves at the beginning, and I was sanding, handling things, and what I would find is that I would go inside with splinters in my finger of like little glass pieces. they become sharp little razors and they dig into your fingers. So wear PPE when you're doing this. If you're going to cut or sand and have dust or anything else, wear a respirator, wear proper eyewear because you are cutting, get in your eyes. Wear a long sleeve shirt, even if it's hot out. Don't get this stuff on your skin, and especially wear gloves when you're going to handle the stuff so you don't get splinters in there. Now, when you're laying the resin, you're probably going to use something like a nitro glove, something disposable that you can just kind of take off, throw away, which makes sense. But when you're cutting, wear something with thicker kind of fingertips and in your palms. That way you don't get this stuff all of your hands are in your skin because, ooh, it is not a good feeling. So moving on to item 5, I tried to double layer some material and it kind of backfired on me. So on these 2 pieces here, what you will find is that it has some deep recessions in the part. Now this is again the one for the ignition cylinder that goes over, and this is the one for the light switch. So I did the ignition cylinder when I laid all the material down, and I did not use an extra piece. So I laid this down all the way down in the recession here, and I thought, this carbon's not going to stretch, right? Vinyl, you can heat up, you can stretch, get it down in the grooves if you need to. Carbon fiber really isn't going to lay down like that. And what I found by doing double layers, at least on this piece, is that if you don't get everything laid down perfectly, well, you're going to get globs that you have to deal with trying to get the pieces together, I guess you get the halves together. Can be done. I just didn't do it well, and so I'm going to say try not to double layer if possible. And I'll show you a close-up of this. Otherwise, you're going to have to deal with maybe some areas that didn't get laid down. You got a glob resin in there. You can fix it. You can add more resin in there and sand it smooth. It's not something it can't be fixed, but it just takes extra time, and you just kind of, turns out kind of garbage. Okay, so for item number 6 is to know about your resin and your resin cure time. So this is the second attempt I did. The first one I did was I covered this 240SX engine cover in just some chopped fiberglass. Now I got this from a kit from Composite and Visions, and it came with their own resin. So when I first did this, the temperature outside was like 85, which meant my shop was like 70-ish. And this took about 4 to 4.5 hours to cure from the liquid state of mixing until the point where it's tacky and I could lay down the fiberglass. Now, when I started doing these portion pieces, well, it was like a month later. It was 104 degrees outside, which meant it was like 83 or so inside my garage. No humidity to speak of. It was like 1%. Just say it was very dry. And the Venom Carbon resin, once I added the hardener at the correct ratio, took about an hour and a half to go from the liquid state of pre-mix or as it mixed to the point where it was tacky. So know your resin cure time. Every brand is going to be a little bit different, and the humidity and temperature in your shop or wherever you're mixing the stuff is going to affect it. So do a test piece or be vigilant at checking it maybe every 30 minutes, because the last thing you want to have to do is let it over cure and then have to come back and add a second layer just because, oops, you made that mistake. All right, so item 7 on my list is going to be about cutting open holes either prior to putting on the top resin, the top dress, or doing it afterwards. So I tried it both ways. I tried to do it where I cut open the holes either on the switch blanks here for the finisher. Before I applied this top resin here over, obviously, the top, I cut all this open. I thought, oh, is this going to be easier to deal with or harder to deal with? And what I found is that I really believe that covering everything up and not cutting these open until I'm done at the end where I have all of the resin on is going to be easier. So don't cut everything open unless you're ready to deal with a lot of boogers. So the way I did it, and again, this is my mistake, I learned from this and I probably won't do it again. If you look at the back of this finisher here, you can see along the console switch bezel, you've got a lot of these openings cut up, and once you add resin in there, they just become like daggers. There's really no way to deal with it very easily. I think if I would have just left this covered and then put all the resin on and then afterwards cut open the hole, would have been a heck of a lot easier to deal with just my little die grinder with the Dremel. I think it would be a lot easier. And then for a sharp corner, you can just use a small file. That way it's easier. All right, so an item 8 on my list is about runoff. So when you mix the resin up together in your cups, one thing you're going to find is that it is going to tend to run. It's pretty liquid at the beginning. And when you mix everything together, it becomes kind of like warm maple syrup is the way I always tell everybody. When you do that, it's going to be kind of runny. And when you put it on parts like this, while you can lay this flat and you have this area here that's flat and the resin's going to sit on top nicely, you put it up along these sections here, gravity is going to make it run down. So you're going to get runoff. You're going to get parts that are going to have thin spots because it's not going to stick unless you make it a vertical piece to where resin will cure on top of that, or you need to let your resin set up to where it's kind of gets to that gel state where it's curing, and then you can start to put it on in places and it will stay a lot easier. The good thing about it and the bad thing about it is it will run, right? So it runs off parts, it's going to leave you thin spots, but at any place like this, to where if this is the bottom and it's going to run down this little kind of ski slope here, it's going to pool down on the bottom end. So if it's going to do this here, you can get a lot of it out. You can take it out right towards the end, but it can also pool up and basically make this very thick. So just be cautious with that. You're going to get thin and thick sections. Now it's great. Most of the stuff you can get to a uniform piece, but you're going to have to go back at the end. Anything that was kind of vertical or it runs off of because it's thin, you'll need to go back in later on and either wait till it's gel, add some more to get a uniform thickness. But it's workable. Just be careful of that. Either get it to a gel to make it stick or worry about thin and thick sections. All right, so item number 9 on my list is removing extra pieces if that is possible. If you look on the back of all my pieces here, I've taken out all the buttons, anything extra, but this bezel here, the column cover, has a rubber piece on the back, and it's actually melted to it, if you will, on the corners. So I thought I would go ahead and just cover it in blue painter's tape. The resin would stick only to the tape, and when I'm done, I can just peel this off of the rubber piece, and it was fine. And I'll say it works decent. It's not a bad way to do it, but it's not great. So if you can take anything off of these things, such as buttons, finishers, anything else, rubber pieces, even if you might have to remelt this part to get this to stick or add some kind of adhesive to put it back on, I would say take it off if possible. 1, it gets it out of the way. 2, it doesn't make sure that you get resin all over it, but it's just kind of a pain in the butt to deal with, especially when you're trying to cut things along the edge, either with a Dremel or anything else. You might go ahead and cut through the part, and then, well, you might end up scrapping the piece because, well, you didn't mean to cut through it in the first place. And last but not least, item number 10 on my list is resin sticks to everything. Now you're thinking, of course it does, dummy. It's sticky. Well, this trash bag I have laid on the counter, it doesn't stick to very well. So you get times when I would take parts off, it would kind of go pop up off, and then you just have to deal with that. Now I have been using wood to set pieces on because I don't mind that it has resin on it. It's not a big deal. But what I found was parts stick to the wood, which is a pain to get off, and then the wood will kind of stick to the plastic bag. So just be cautious with that. I've seen it where they're doing custom stands to make everything sit on there, which can be done. It's not that difficult to do, but at your first in the beginning, you're thinking, I don't want to put a lot of time or anything else into tooling or extra stands to make everything fit, but just be cautious and know that if resin pools under a part on a piece of wood or something else that is not exactly a trash bags aren't that sticky, but anything else there, it will tend to stick to it, and you'll have to cut it off or you're going to break off the wood or something else. Just be cautious. Resin sticks to everything. All right, so that's it. There are 10 mistakes I have made on my first adventure into skinning parts with carbon fiber. Now, if you're interested in any of the carbon fiber you've seen here, of course, I have purple, I have blue, I have red, and I have some chopped, all from Venom Carbon. I've got links down to Venom Carbon out there on these materials and over to their site. Any of the tools I mentioned, razor blades, scissors, Dremel, any of these other pieces, everything's down in the description. You can always jump over there and see what I'm playing with over here if you're interested in doing that. Otherwise, try to avoid the mistakes, or if you make the mistake, you'll probably learn from it. So that's it for this time. Check out all the future where I'm playing with a lot more carbon fiber stuff and everything I'm using. We'll see you next time.